Welcome back to episode 5 of Take Charge of the Classroom, a web series designed to disrupt outdated behavior management models and help you create the classroom culture of your dreams. So today we are talking about protection and how we as teachers need to provide protection to our students, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically, but also how we can actually get that done and why it's so important for our students. Trust is really what we're talking about, how to build trust and why trust is so important to students and, quite honestly, so important to learning. Trust is really non-negotiable. Looking at the big picture, we're still using the immediate impact sequence, and this is the fourth step in the Take Charge model using that sequence, and it comes under confidence. So as we as teachers give our students protection, understand why protection is so important, we gain confidence because we know what we're supposed to be doing. And we know how to create these systems and the environment needed for students to learn. A lot of times we as teachers, we might not be as confident in our abilities because we're just up there doing the best we can, but we don't actually know what it really takes to get teaching and learning to happen. We show up, we do our very best, and we just pray that it works. But one thing that we know, and this is from neuroscience and this is from psychology, is that students need to feel protected. And so knowing that gives us confidence as educators that we can do certain things in order to ensure a successful completion of the year, successful achievement on the test, however you gain or gauge completion. So without trust, let's talk about what happens when students don't have trust. When there is a cold classroom environment, maybe a disinterested or a disconnected teacher, maybe there's bullying in the classroom, it's just not warm and friendly, and there's no trust. The student doesn't trust the teacher, maybe because of ethical issues, maybe because the student has been burned too many times by previous adults, but whatever happens, there is no trust, there's no vulnerability in this classroom. Why is that a big deal? Some of you might be thinking, well, their job is to learn, my job is to teach. They do their job, I do my job, everyone's happy. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Without trust, students will not stretch their limits. In order to learn something, you have to first admit that you don't know something, that you are in an area of needing to be stretched and needing to be expanded. And if you don't feel psychologically safe, then you are not going to stretch your limits, and you are not going to take risks, and you are not going to attempt to learn new things, because academic risks are scary. It is scary to ask that question when it seems like everyone else in the classroom already knows the answer. It is vulnerable. It makes you very vulnerable to admit that you don't know something, or to struggle, or to be seen struggling. A lot of students are so focused on their academic reputation in the classroom that they're not willing to admit that they don't know something. And if they really don't know something and it's obvious, then their other go-to will be, well, I'm just not going to try, or I'm going to goof off. See, a lot of our misbehavior in the classroom comes from students not feeling safe. They don't like being in that space of not knowing, and they're not comfortable taking an academic risk and maybe being wrong and having friends laugh at them. So what they're going to do instead is goof off. And they're going to say, well, at least if I could have done it if I wanted to. That's kind of their mental excuse that they give themselves. But sometimes the behavior we see is because it's not a safe environment for learning, and students don't feel psychologically protected. They're definitely not going to be open to feedback if they don't feel trust with you and trust with each other, because any type of learning is not going to be perfect the first time. So there's going to be an opportunity for feedback. You're going to give some corrective feedback. You're going to give them some strategies, some hints, some scaffolding. They're not going to be open to any of that if they don't feel trust with you. That's why trust is so important. Ultimately, they're not going to learn. Learning is not going to happen. Take a moment and think about a student that you taught in the past that was just shut down, that just was not willing to try anything, was not willing to extend him or herself for whatever reason. There was no trust from that student. How much did that student learn that year? Probably nothing. If anything, it was accidental. So trust is key. It comes from relationships. So we talked about that in the second episode, how important relationships are. But not just being friends with students, not just being connected with students, not just helping them feel belonging. That's important. But related to that, if we want our classroom management to improve, we need to build trust in the classroom. Because when students trust you, when they trust each other, when they trust the classroom culture, that they're not going to be made fun of or laughed at if they try something new, then they will be open to feedback. They will take academic risks, and they will stretch their limits. Because brains need safety. Safety is at the very base of our brainstem. And remember, we talked about the amygdala and how it is constantly seeking safety. Am I safe? Right? And those two questions, am I safe and am I loved? Those are the questions that need to be answered every single morning as they walk in. If they don't feel safe because of a lack of trust in the classroom, lack of trust from the teacher, then it's not going to happen. It's going to end poorly for everyone. No learning, classroom disruptions, or just complete disengagement. And the brain needs to feel safe. So as you are evaluating your students, as you're reflecting on their behaviors, as you're trying to figure out why some of them might be learning and some of them might not be learning, look at it through this lens of safety. Do they feel safe in the classroom? Do they show that they are safe? Because it's a physiological reality. When people don't feel safe, they kind of fold in on themselves. You see a lot of hoodies up. You see a lot of heads down. You see a lot of arms crossed to try to protect their body. When brains feel safe, they're open, they're expansive, they're laughing, they're joyful, they're playful. And if you don't have that safety, it's as essential to learning as oxygen is to a flame. It is required. So how do we build this safety? Because if we build safety, we're going to eliminate quite a bit of misbehavior even before it starts. So here are some things you can personally commit to. This is not an exhaustive list, just a few things to think about. Come in with a positive attitude tomorrow. And I know you might be thinking, oh, I always have a positive attitude. Yeah, most of us have a positive attitude the first week of school, and then reality hits in. And then the kids get comfortable, and things, you were so ready for this year to be different. You had all your plans, you worked all summer, this was going to be the year. And then things start shaping up the exact same way that they have the last few years. Things start going sideways. And that turns us negative, that turns us bitter. When you go into your classroom expecting the students to misbehave, that's exactly what you're going to find. Because we always find what we're looking for. So if you come in with a positive attitude tomorrow, if you come in with higher expectations, if you're expecting teaching and learning to happen, if you are expecting students to treat each other with dignity and respect, if you are expecting students to follow procedures, that positive attitude is going to show up in how you speak, your nonverbals, in your tone of voice, and some of that will rub off, and some of that you can speak into existence because students will follow your lead. If you're coming into the classroom every day with a negative attitude, how can you expect them to feel safe with you? How can you expect them to trust you? Start by saying good morning to at least 5 students. You don't have to do a full 30-minute handshake ritual at the door, though those are kind of fun, can be time-consuming, but those are a great way to start the day. Just say good morning to at least 5 students. Start with small commitments. A lot of times, trust sometimes gets broken, not necessarily between the teacher and the students, but within the teacher herself. Because the first wave of trust, Stephen M.R. Covey tells us in The Speed of Trust, is actually self-trust. If we don't trust ourselves, it's going to be hard for students to trust us. And a lot of us, sometimes we have so many broken promises to ourselves in our background, we don't honestly trust ourselves to do things. We commit, but we know ultimately we're probably not going to follow through. And that lack of self-trust bleeds out into everything that we do, our communication, our mannerisms, and it sends a signal of, hey kids, don't trust me. I'm going to let you down. I let myself down all the time. So if you're having difficulty keeping commitments to yourself, start with small commitments, baby steps. Commit to saying good morning to at least 5 students. You don't need to say good morning to every single one of them, but start with a small commitment, 5 students. And then in a week or so, you can stretch that up to 6 or 7. As you write down and keep these small commitments to yourself, you're going to find that your self-trust begins to increase. Here's another commitment that you can use to build this trust and safety in the classroom. You can give your difficult students the benefit of the doubt. They're going to do crazy things. They are going to do things that drive you up off the wall. And we are so good at assuming that we know what they meant and judging them on their perceived intentions, but we don't know what they meant. We don't know what their intentions were. We have no idea what was going on in their mind, or if anything was going on in their mind when they threw that eraser across the room. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt, because maybe nobody else does. Maybe they're acting out because no one believes in them, because their past is just littered with poor choices. But what if you are the one that breaks that cycle, and you believe in them, and you give them the benefit of the doubt, and you talk to them knowing that they want to do well, knowing that they want to succeed and achieve? You can break the chain, because if you give them the benefit of the doubt, they will begin to trust you. And if you're always giving them the benefit of the doubt, and you're always believing the best about them, that trust will open them up to learning. Ultimately, we as teachers can actually serve as secondary attachment figures. Now, attachment theory is huge in child development, and there's a lot more you can read about it online, but in short, it's that connection that a child has with his or her mother. And could be a father, but typically it's with the mother as the primary caregiver. And students that develop a strong attachment or a secure attachment with one or both of their parents have so many advantages in life. And they've done all of these longitudinal studies following these kids, rating their level of attachment. There's different types of attachment, but secure attachment is really what we're wanting here. And just how it affects their health, their income, their general well-being 20 years later. We know how important parents are, and we know how important that secure attachment, that base of operations is what parents can serve as, right? But what they also found is that teachers can also serve as secondary attachment figures. So even if a child does not have a strong parent, or both parents are not necessarily in the picture, or something is going on to where they don't have that secure attachment, you as a teacher can serve as a secondary attachment figure. And we've all probably either had that teacher in our own past, or maybe know someone that had that teacher that literally saved that student's life. You can be that person. And even though you're not the parent, you as an adult that is secure, that is trustworthy, and that believes the best in the child, you can change that child's trajectory, and you don't even have to take that child home. Just how you show up in the classroom every single day. So if we give our students protection, if they trust us, we're setting them up for success. So thank you for watching this web series. As always, you can find more about this book or about this web series on my website, aarondaffern.com/takecharge. You can email me, or you can follow me at Aaron Daffern.